Hey Dan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Excited to join. I look forward to this conversation.
Why don't we just start off? Tell me your story.
Yeah, happy to. I live here in Florida. I came here with my family. We came here from Mexico when we were younger. I was about 8 years old. My brother, 7 years old, and have been here in Tampa for 30 plus years now. And My brother and I have always been, best friends and always attached to the hip. And we started a business like when we were still in college. I think I was 21 and he was 20, and that business over time just evolved. It was focused generally in the consumer goods space, and then also in the e-commerce space separately, and then they kind of came together. And we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that business for a long time, over 10 years. And a couple of years ago, back in 2021, we sold the business. We were going out trying to raise money for the first time, and we had another partner, really good friend of ours named Pat from high school. We sold the business to a company called Spins that is one of the leaders in providing data solution, information technology solutions to CPG brands in the space, mostly focused like on the natural space. We had the e-commerce and Amazon side of that data, and they were really the leaders on the brick and mortar side. So it kind of made sense to come together. And yeah, that was kind of like the culmination of the work we had put into it since we were in college.
So you started your first business with your brother. Tell me more about your brother. How are you guys similar? How are you guys different?
We look very similar and we sound the same, but I think that's where the similarities kind of end. I joke, but I say it seriously. He's smarter than I am, which I'm very fortunate, because it's always good to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you. And he's great with numbers. The guy's really good at anything accounting and finance based. So it kind of made a good marriage for us, because he kind of focused on like the back office stuff and the finance and the accounting part of the business, really making sure that we had a disciplined company. And I've always been much more on the commercial side, and I'm introverted, but I think once it comes to like work and business and things like that, and I get out and start talking to people about whatever it is that we were doing at the time, I just kind of light up, and I've always kind of had that strength on the commercial side. So it made a nice pairing there, and so we kind of worked well with each other. And then our other partner, Pat McLaughlin, he was self-taught developer and built an incredible product. And so it was a really good three-person monster that we built, three-headed monster that we built with him building the product, me going out and selling it, and my brother making sure that everything worked in the background the way that it was supposed to.
So I'm an immigrant as well. I came to the U.S. When I was 9 from Romania. I'm curious, what was your immigration story like?
Yeah, my parents, especially my dad, he always wanted to live here. We would come here into Clearwater Beach in the summers. We were, when I was little, just to vacation. My dad always had, I just remember, I'm sure my mom did as well, but my dad was very vocal about it. He always had like this admiration for the US and for Americans in general. So it was like the mid 90s, and things in Mexico just weren't, not that they've ever been great, but it was just like a particularly difficult time economically and so forth. And so my parents said, hey, let's go and see what happens. Let's try it out. We maybe go for a few months, maybe we just stay, right? And so we gave it a shot, and they gave it a shot. We were too young to, have an opinion on it at that point. And
How old were you when that happened?
I was 8, and I remember, and I still tell people this, I didn't speak any English. I maybe knew like a few of the basic words, right? Like apple or house or things like that. But I was 8. My brother was just about to turn 7, and we came here, and the rest is history. We're here.
How did your parents end up figuring things out in the US? Was it easy for them to transition work-wise or culture-wise?
Yeah. So my dad comes from a family of entrepreneurs, and he'd always been an entrepreneur. And so when we came here, he opened up a business. And so that was from like a professional perspective for him. That was kind of like he saw an opportunity and just kind of took it from that side of it. And we, we blended right in. Obviously, we went to summer camp the first few months we were here because we came in the summer, then just got into school. And it's tough, right? Because when you're that young, you don't really know what's happening per se. You go from, one culture, one language to another. But no, I mean, I always say, my parents always say it, that we were welcomed with open arms, and it seems like everybody that we came across was just, I think, just a general culture was kind of very accepting of like letting just opening up your arms to people, and Americans have always kind of given us that opportunity. Yeah, I mean, couldn't have asked for anything better from that perspective. And it took us a long time. It took me, I think, like 25. So it took me 17 years to get my citizenship, which is, it's just kind of emblematic of like the challenges that a lot of immigrants face, and coming here and being able to stay here. So it took me a long time. My parents and my brother, it was all kind of done separately. Like, you get your interview and your appointment, and your time to get your naturalization ceremony done at different times. But it was a long time.
I've been through that as well. What's it's coming from a family of entrepreneurs? What lessons did you learn about entrepreneurship from your dad, from other relatives?
Yeah. So my dad's side of the family, as you can tell, my last name Harari is not like a one from like a Spanish origin. It's a Jewish Syrian last name, and they came from the Middle East to Mexico in the 1920s, I believe, and with nothing. I mean, that's a story that we've all been told. And they came with nothing. They kind of fled and came to Mexico. A lot of them went to New York or other places. And I think they didn't have any other way of kind of getting by, but figuring it out on their own. And they've been ultra successful. I mean, that community has been incredibly successful in Mexico and throughout other places in Latin America and in the U.S. as well. And I think it's just because that's the only way that they couldn't come here and get a job. They weren't, they didn't know anyone, and so they kind of had to figure it out. And it's a long way of saying that I knew nothing except for that. To me, my dad had ingrained in me, probably without really knowing it, that that's what I was going to be. I wasn't going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I don't think I was smart enough anyway, but to be able to, it was always, you're not going to go get a job, you're going to start a business. And that's what it was. That's when my brother and I, we were trying to figure out what it was that we were going to do, not where we were going to send our resumes into to get a job at school.
Did he give you any lessons about dealing with entrepreneurship? And it's not as stable as getting a regular job, and there's a lot of ups and downs, I'd imagine. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, lots of ups and downs. I think I'm extremely, my brother as well, we're extremely fortunate that we experienced, my dad was very successful. And then he had times where things were just really, really rough. Like, and we all were impacted by that big time. And when I would say big time, I mean big time. Like, we lost things. We had to move. And I think part of it was because we were here, we didn't really have a support system and network. Like, you didn't really know that many people. And for me now, I have a lot of friends, and this is where I grew up, and I can go ask somebody for a job, if things kind of go sideways. But my dad didn't really know anyone. So it kind of.
And so he was putting the house up as collateral, that kind of thing, to get the business to work?
Yeah, I mean, had the main business that he started here closed down, and with that, a lot of things went with it. Yeah, we had to move, we had to sell the house, we had to sell a lot of things, and that was probably. I was in middle school, entering high school, and so the reason I say that was something that was. I couldn't have asked for anything better. My dad had to deal with the stress, and so did my mom. But I had seen what success was, and I also saw what having nothing but having very little was very shortly after, and all that kind of situation didn't cure itself quickly. Took a long time. And so my brother and I, we didn't inherit money when we turned 18, or we didn't get help to buy a house, or we didn't. I had, when we started our business, I remember I had $1,700 in my bank account, and that was it. And a lot of people tell their stories. I came here with this or that, but like I literally had $1,700 in my bank account. The good thing is that I was 20 or 19 or 21. I don't remember the exact date when that started, but I didn't have a lot of things to pay. But
And so you're starting a business right in the midst of the failure of your dad's business, and your dad is still supportive of you becoming an entrepreneur. Like that must have been pretty one hell of a lesson, one way to get started on this journey.
yeah, my dad's a very smart man, and he said, I would say things from time to time that could still stay with me today. One of the things he would always say is, if you're going through hell, keep going. He would also say, never, ever, 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 ever give up, like with the lots of evers on there. So that's just part of being an entrepreneur is kind of knowing that there are going to be times that are very difficult. And I don't think he knew any different either. Like he came from, his dad was a very successful entrepreneur and all of his family and everybody. So that's just what he knew. And that's just what he expected of us, but thought we were going to end up being just because of like what we were surrounded by. And good or bad, that's what we went into.
Wow, that's amazing. You started this business. What was that journey like? Were there a lot of ups and downs for you as well? I mean, it sounds like you had great exits, but what happened in between?
I like to tell this story, and I don't know how. I mean, I've told it privately to people, but so we had a lot of connections with large retail chains like the CVS's and the Walmarts of the world, just because of a business that my dad was in, and so we had relationships with brokers and things like that, and I was that's when I was 21, I think, and we went in to meet with the buyer at Walmart. He was hosting like these meetings in Jacksonville where people could go see him. It was called ECRM. And so my brother and I went with a couple product ideas. And I mean, we were in college. I'm not entirely sure why he gravitated towards us, but like 2 months went by and he calls me and he says, "Hey, I like what you guys presented to me, but can you guys make emery boards? Like, do you guys have the ability to make emery boards?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." I had no idea what an emery board was. So there I'm talking to him and I'm
What
opening
is an emery board?
a nail file, like just like the nail files that people use for their nails. And
You're like, yeah, I make those all the time. Yeah.
it's like, yep, got it. 10, we'll take
Whatever,
care of it. I'm
whatever
Googling
need.
what it, yeah. So anyway, so I said yes. I figured out how to design some stuff on Adobe Illustrator. I sent him the renderings, came up with the name, and a few months went by. And I remember this is when I was like pretty close to broke when I gave I didn't have much money. And he sent us an email. It's like the first few days of December. And he says, "Hey, the Emery boards are good to go on all the checkouts and all Walmarts nationwide, which is 80,000 points of sale. They have to be delivered by February 14th, which is like this is December, we're talking 3 months. No idea who makes them,
Holy
had no
shit.
money to make them." And I saw the email on my phone and I started tearing up. I said, "This is like, this is the dream, but now I got to figure this out." So my brother and I figured it out. I flew to China a few days later. He started meeting with people here in Tampa locally to give us financing, get us financing for this. And we delivered just in time and made a good amount of money on that because it was all the checkouts and all Walmarts nationwide. I mean, that is like, there's no better place in the world to have a product because the amount of traffic that goes through there. And so we use that money to kind of start the rest of our business.
I'm fascinated by that story, and I've heard similar stories before, and I feel like it's an underreported part of business, which is this this fake it till you make it attitude when you're going in and you have no idea what you're in there for, and they ask you something, it's like, absolutely, I've got you, and then and that's it. And I think what there's obviously like many situations where that goes poorly, where people like overpromise and they can't deliver on things. But I think what ends up, so there's like some element of you have to talk a big game. It's like the art of war, right? When you're weak, pretend to be strong, and vice versa. But then the key is the execution. Like everyone can, like you can go into a meeting and exaggerate and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. But then to actually pull it off is the hardest part of all this. Although I think, yeah, it is, important to go in there and have this confidence in yourself and believe that you can do this impossible, even though most people in that situation are looking at a college kid like, oh, you have to fill these things in all the Walmarts in the country. Like, there's no way this kid can do it, but you pulled it off. So that's amazing.
You said a couple of things in there that I think I'd like to kind of highlight. Like one is, a lot of times people ask like, what makes a successful like entrepreneur? Like people get opportunities in front of them all the time. And I think a good entrepreneur is one that like recognizes it and seizes that opportunity and just kind of runs with it. The fake it till you make it thing for sure. I mean, there's just I don't think entrepreneurs are any smarter. I mean, I have my smartest friends aren't entrepreneurs. They're successful people and they're lawyers, doctors. They work for big companies. And their willingness to take on risk is much different than an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is willing to say, okay, I'm going to give this a shot and we'll see where it goes. And I think, especially when you're young, and you don't have a business yet, like you're trying to start a business for the first time, that fake it till you make it thing is kind of what a lot of the founding stories are. It's like you kind of have to do that because you don't have anything already built or you don't have the backing, you don't have the money to do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fizzles out. I think when you're at scale and you have a company that's larger and you have employees and that stuff stops quickly because it has to out of responsibility. But that's, I think a lot of people start their businesses that way. And then it's just, like you said, it's about executing against it. Like if you're able to execute through on the other side, then that's when.
Yeah. At some point, I'd love to drill more into that fake it till you make it concept because underlying it is trust. And you're building trust very quickly with someone at Walmart who's very experienced. I mean, you're saying he was there in Jacksonville having these meetings all the time. I'm sure he saw tons of people and he chose you to do this. And you got to ask yourself, like, I'm sure there were other people that were, saying, oh, I can get X, Y, and Z done. But how you actually build that credibility when you're young and you don't have it, like or just your dad coming to America, it doesn't have the network, you don't have the support system. Like, how do you actually build that kind of credibility? And I think one of the things that I've realized is that it's part of it is through networks. If you can say, hey, I know so and so, and like my dad knows so and so, like I even though like you don't have a very deep relationship with that person, but that person's like, oh yeah, I met Dan. Like Dan's a good guy, and that you somehow like piggybacking off of these like social networks to give you a little bit more credibility than you probably deserve at that point. But I don't know if you have any other tips of how can someone who's young doesn't really have much, how can they build this kind of credibility to walk into Walmart and get them to believe that they can execute.
Yeah, I actually love this topic. So I was having this conversation with a friend of mine like 2 weeks ago. Guy who's been very successful, is older than me. I said, I think the best time to start a business is when you're super young because you don't have that much to lose at that point. When you're older, you have kids, you have a mortgage, you have private school tuition to pay for, you have all these other things that are already there, and you're also worth a lot more out in the market. Like you can command a much higher salary than when you're 20 years old. I mean, at 20, what are you going to make? At least back then, 30, 40 grand a year, maybe 50. Like the time to do it is when you're young because the opportunity cost is much, much more in the favor of the entrepreneur than for one. And so I think this idea of like, start off your career and then when you're older, try to build a business, like it's very difficult at that point. It's almost irresponsible, right? Like, what are you going to tell your wife and kids? Like, oh, I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit my job that I'm making X amount of money on and go see what happens here. I don't know. It's tough, right?
Although your dad did that, right? Moving to America and doing all these things. So yes, it is tough, and you sometimes lose the house, and you get all the terrible things that come with it. But yeah, no, it is much harder.
Yeah, and I think people that do that are absolutely much more brave, and I think you just have a lot more respect for that because it takes a very strong stomach to be able to make a decision like that, especially when you have it good where you are, right? Because we had it very well. We were living a great life where we were. On being young, there's something called a humble hubris ratio, and I think that what that means is that you have to be humble. I think people who aren't and think that think and act like they're smarter than everybody else, people just don't gravitate towards them. And you also have to have respect for people that have done it before you and that also they can teach you lots of things. But there's a hubris part where you have to also walk into a room and say, I have the ability to beat everybody in here. I can kick everybody's ass in whatever this is. And I think anyone who's good at anything, whether it's a specific sport or something in business, like they have that confidence to know that they can win. And so it's you have to balance that and say, okay, I might be 20 or 21, but I think that I can build something or do something better than all these middle-aged men that are here in the same place in Jacksonville trying to sell to this guy. Like I can run circles around them. And you just have to have that mentality of like, I can win, I can do this, I can make it happen.
And do you find that associated with that is a little bit of an underdog story where you have a chip on your shoulder and you're going into these rooms and you're like, why does this person have so much more than me when I know I can do that, and you try to work your whole life to proving to them and to yourself that you can actually make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just having is knowing that you have like seeing success and saying, okay, like if that guy can be successful, I think I can do it as well because I can have the drive or I'm close enough intellectually or intelligently to be able to do what he's been able to do, like in this specific field. But you also have to be humble and be willing to learn from people. Like not willing, you need to learn from people. It's super important. I guess you just can't be arrogant. You have to be confident without being arrogant. And I don't think there's ever been a very successful entrepreneur who doesn't have that like, aggressive confidence internally that they know that they can make something happen. If you don't have that, you're gonna fold the first time you get some sort of challenge come across your journey, right? It's not easy, as you know.
So take us through the next chapter in your company story. So you went from having 1,700 in your bank account to now you're selling these products all over Walmart's. Like what do you remember what revenues you were doing back then?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't super high, but for us, it was. I mean, we were probably doing a few $1 million a year.
It's
Highly
amazing.
profitable. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money.
And
I
you're
mean,
in
that's
college still.
20, 21, and we're selling 150 grand, 200 grand a week of this stuff, right? And so,
What did that feel like when you first saw these like big checks that you yourself brought in?
it goes back to what we just were talking about. Like, and you believe it, but you don't believe it. You're like, okay, I knew that I can do this, but then you're seeing these big numbers. You're like, am I really like, is this real? Right? At the same time. And so we used that. We knew that business had a like an end to it. It was kind of like what retailers call it in and out. Like it's a product that's going to be on the shelf for X amount of time, and unless it's like it just kind of does super well and blows up and whatever, it's like they have a life cycle. If you look at the front end checkouts of all these like Walmart, they're constantly like rotating stuff in and out. So we used that money to start an e-commerce business, which was essentially focus on the health and beauty space. So we started our own website, started selling on Amazon, on eBay, all those different places, and realized that was a nice business, but it was like super low margin. And so we built, again, fake it till you make it. Like I was in a meeting with a brand at a trade show, and I was trying to convince them to let us sell their products online. And he said, you know what? I'm just having a lot of trouble with like controlling my online presence and I still remember the guy who was talking to me, and my pricing and all these. It's just become super challenging. And I go, well, we can do that. That's actually one of the things that we do, and that is how that next business kind of started. Is from there. It's kind of that idea of like, okay, well, why don't we move over to services? And then from the services side, Pat and my brother built an internal platform to be able to better manage what we were doing for our clients and to build a dashboard with all these metrics that we could track internally. And then we said, hey, well, this is actually like usable for brands. Like people would pay for this, right? And so we said, hey, why don't we build this kind of like customer facing so that like people actually are paying us for this stuff versus us using it internally. And so that's where the kind of the big idea came from is let's take this platform, polish it and build it so that people were willing to pay for this. And that became like the core of the business. And that's what ultimately we sold.
Okay, fascinating. I want to unpack a couple of things in there from a business perspective. So your first business, you're selling these like emery boards to Walmarts. You said that they were very high margin. Like what kind of margins did you have on that?
I remember the numbers. We were buying them at 14 cents delivered in the US and selling them at 63 cents. And we had no employees, my brother and so I mean, pure profit.
That's amazing. But as you said, the challenge with that is that you don't really have a brand, and they can always swap in the next hot item at checkout. So it's like super high margin business, but there's risk there because you don't have a brand. And it sounds like the next business you went into, this e-commerce business, was much more about a brand, but then the margins were lower. Is that right?
Yeah, high top line. I mean, we were doing 15, $16 million a year in sales quickly, up there quickly, and barely clearing a few $100,000 a year in EBITDA. So it was just, I just don't think it was sustainable because if anything ever were to go sideways or the margins continued to get squeezed, you don't really have much of a business. And it wasn't something that anyone would pay for. Like you couldn't really sell that business, at least at that point.
Why was the EBITDA margin so low? Where was it going to?
Just downward pressure. Like we were early into a market that became very popular, and so like we were early in selling these products online, like health and beauty products, vitamin supplement products. Just like we kind of were riding that wave of Amazon growing and eBay growing and all of that. But we were early, and people noticed, and others not noticed us, but noticed the opportunity and jumped in, and it just became like a race to the bottom price wise. Like whoever could offer the best price was going to win the business. Like, you know, I'm generalizing, but that's what started happening. And so just your margins just got continually squeezed. Don't get me wrong, it was a nice business and it paid the bills and we had 40 employees at that time. And it's one of the things that made me really proud, actually, not to go on a tangent, but being able to come here as an immigrant and then being able to build a business to hire people. I think a lot of times, like people hear it the other way, like, oh, you know, we here coming and taking jobs and stuff. Like not always the case. Like we built something and we're one of the things I'm most proud of is like building a business where like we were able to employ so many people. But anyway, that was a
No,
tangent.
I love that, and I totally agree. I mean, if you someone should run the numbers on the employment created by immigrants in the country, and you have it's massive companies, right, that have these like immigrant stories that got them to where they are. What's okay? So just to unpack that a little bit more, so you're doing about 15 million in top line. I get that prices were coming down. Like, was your gross margin getting compressed, or but we also had a lot more employees at this point? So your marketing costs high, like employee costs high. Like, what was the cost structure?
It was mostly just like the unit economics of everything. Each product that we sold was just like the retail price had just continually came down because we were competing against other people selling the same thing or something similar, and it just became whoever sold it at the best price generally sold the product. Obviously, people had to sell at a profit, so there was still margin, but it just became smaller and smaller. And we kind of saw that, and we said, "Hey, that's kind of like the services idea that I told you." Kind of came to me in a trade show. That's when we started to pivot in that direction, which was obviously like the right move. It helped tremendously.
So, okay, so you start off with doing a somewhat commodity, high margin product sold at Walmart. Then you dive deeper into e-commerce, building a brand around it. The margins are low. And then you realize that other people are having the same kind of pricing issues that you're having. And fake it till you make it. You're like, oh, we actually solved that problem. So you pivot now into services. What was the income statement of the services business? What are the challenges there? I assume that the margins are probably not as good as your Walmart, but they're better than the e-commerce side of it. Or what was that business like?
Yeah, that business was good, and it actually was part of the business that Spins ultimately purchased from us. It was high margin. I mean, I don't remember the exact numbers, but call it 50, 60% margin on that business. It's a services business. If you run it well, it's a good business. And that actually allowed us to fund the product that we built. And that's one of the things that I don't like to give a lot of advice because I mean, who am I to give people advice? I'm just like a guy, whatever. Like I'm not Jeff Bezos, but
You've been through a lot though. So yeah, don't sell
yeah.
yourself short. What's the advice? I want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, you usually hear of like tech companies having to raise money to be able to build a business, right? Because it takes a long time to build a product and the cash flow isn't always there. And so you just have to go through continual like capital raises to be able to finally get to cash flow positive or to profitability. if you're able to, it's not always the case, but if you're able to layer on top like tech-enabled services to that thing that you're doing, that is one of the ways you can help fund that business. And so if you can provide like, hey, we have this really good product and we're going to sell you services on top of it to help you manage it. A lot of times you can charge double or triple the price for that, for those services, because our clients were consumer goods companies like, shampoo companies, vitamin companies, stuff that you find at a CVS or at a Kroger or Publix. And the people who were client, the actual people that we were speaking to, like the individuals, like they didn't either have the time or the other know how to like manage the tool that we were selling. They liked the data and they liked what was in there, but you can provide services layered on top. Then you make their life way easier, and a lot of times they have budget for it. So you use that money, the managed services money, which is very profitable, to just to fund the business. And when we sold the business, we owned 100% of it. Like we didn't have any investors. It was all like my brother, myself, Pat, a couple of buddies, Joe, and we have some other employees that had a couple points. And yeah, I mean, we owned all of it. So that not everyone can do that, but if you can use that to help fund the business and give it a shot.
Yeah, no, that's super important, especially in a world where everyone defaults to raising VC money. If you figure out a way to do this on your own, you have a lot more flexibility. I'm curious, the transition from a services business to a product business. How did you find that? How did you have to hire a product person to come in and help you do that? Were you building out the product? I mean, it sounded like it was an internal dashboard for yourselves, but in terms of commercializing it, was it pretty straightforward to just say, "Hey, I'm now going to push this out to clients," or did you have to add features, polish it up?
We had to polish it up, but we were very early, and Pat hired a couple of people to help him out, but it was like a very lean team. They honestly built such a good and intuitive product. Like they had to polish it, but they figured it out. I think where our biggest learnings were and where we grew up the most quickly was around like the sales motion and the go-to-market strategy. We have a lot of relationships in the industry just because I'd been in it for so long, which helped, but it could only get you so far. And so I'd give him a shout out again from high school. One of our closest friends, named Jake Bernstein, sales genius. He came up, we brought him on board. He just built out our go-to-market strategy and kind of made it like professionalized it and helped us kind of build out like, hey, this is how a SaaS company actually sells stuff.
What was that go-to-market strategy? Did you find that it was easier to start selling the product and then you're layering the services on top of it, or are you going to your services clients and selling them the product?
Yeah, people were much more receptive to the product. Like they would listen, they would pick up the phone or talk to you at a trade show if you came into them speaking about the product, because there was really nobody that we knew of at the time doing that. And then once you get them in front of you, then you have the ability to sell them the services. So that was how we found people to be more receptive. Is we have this data solution that can help you track the market and so on and so forth.
And how many of your product customers also sign up for services? And what were the economics like in terms of the revenue of the product versus the services and the margins on those two businesses?
Yeah. So when we sold the business, we were pretty close to break even overall, but the services side, I think, was profitable, obviously. But our revenue was mostly on the product side. I don't remember exactly, call it 70, 75%. Most of it was on the product side. But that again, the services is what kept us afloat without having to go out and raise. We went out to raise money, but we got an offer from Spins to just buy us out. So that's how that happened.
Got it. And you've been through everything. I feel like every single business model, and you've had the opportunity to learn from, which I think has then informed how you set up the next part of it. So then you are now acquired, like fully acquired by Spins, was my understanding, right? So now were you working as a Spins employee at this point? What happened afterwards?
Yeah, fully acquired. That was my first real job. Or as an employee. And one of the things that we were very proud of is Spence is an awesome organization. And Tony Olson, who was the owner of Spence at the time and the CEO, he's an awesome guy. And you could just, when you sell your business, you have to be careful because they could turn around and fire a lot of your people. We could tell that Spence had a great culture and Tony was just like a genuinely good guy. And we were very proud of, we had at high, I think we had like 40 something employees at that time. I think like 42, 43 employees. And they got to work at a place that was better for them. Most of them probably got raises or like ended up making more money over time, better 401k, better health insurance, just more stability, obviously, from going to a startup to going to a company that's 500 employees and PE back. Like, we gave them a better home. They all deserved it. Like, they all helped us build the company. So it was due to everyone's hard work. It felt good knowing that, like, hey, all of these people that have really put everything into this now have a secure place to work versus like, you know, you may have had a nice exit and a lot of people lose their jobs. So it was the exact opposite. But anyway, on the spins question, spins, I learned a lot. I mean, there was a lot of really seasoned like professionals in there and C-suite and people that really had been doing this for a while. And so again, going back to the humble hubris part, like, especially when you're younger, you should always take advantage of like having the ability to learn from others. And for us, I mean, we saw how a larger organization was managed, which not a lot of people were able to go through that journey of like knowing how to be an entrepreneur. And like a lot of people who are like working in corporate America, like have no idea. Like, in fact, most of them have no idea what it is like and probably couldn't start a business because of lots of reasons. Like, it's just not that easy. So we had the ability to build a business, go through that roller coaster of a journey, and now go through like that was undergrad, and then grad school was like, you know, going through spins and kind of learning how this larger company's managed and all the things that are required to really run a company of that size that is much different of a company of 40 or 50 people.
It sounds like the theme of your career has been constant learning from different types of company structures, and then at Spins you got a chance to, exactly like you said, learn from an enterprise how things are done, which is very different than how things are done when it was just you and your brother or you and 40 people. So what's fast forward to today? Where are you now? What are you doing today?
Yeah, so I went over to a company in the supplement space, a company called Irwin Naturals. They were actually a client of ours years ago, and I knew some people there. And they brought me over as chief of growth. Essentially, that means helping on the commercial side with commercial strategy, mostly focused on like underperforming channels. A lot of it on the digital side. Obviously, and I have a lot of background there. And it's another company that's you know, very well, pretty large. I mean, a company that's been around for 30 years. At retail, probably does close to like 150, 160 or more $1 million a year, like probably $170 million a year, like Walmart, CVS, and all those places. And so it's again learning new things there and bringing things that I've learned over the years that I could maybe apply here as well.
So I mean, you had a pretty phenomenal career so far. What do your parents think of your success?
Man, you're asking good questions. I got to think that they're proud of my brother and I. I think especially since we've been able to do this together. One thing they like very much ingrained in us is that like our relationship was always the most important. Obviously, once you get married, that, you know, things change. But up until then, like nobody comes in between, you know, you two. And we always stuck together and did everything together. And we were able to go through this journey together and have, you know, this financial success together, which I got to think makes them proud.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And I also have a brother, and I get that. Like, especially as an immigrant, when you don't know anybody, your immediate family is your entire community, and so you gotta stick out for each other. And that was also drilled into us, and it makes you appreciate the people that you have in your small tribe. And yeah, it's constantly thinking about how to expand that tribe, but at the same time, how to take advantage of these like really close relationships that you have formed because you didn't have anybody else.
That's correct. Yeah, that's well said.
Well, Dan, it was awesome to chat with you today. This was a really remarkable story, and I'm glad we got to meet. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you for having me on. It was great.